Welcome to The Hidden World of Women, a podcast brought to you by Women's Health and Wellbeing Services. My name is Emma and I'll be your host for today's episode. Hello, hello, hello. Today I am joined by Carisa Montooth. So Carisa is a love coach and certified 6th generation energy healer. Carisa shows single women how to attract and date marriage-minded men without self-sabotage, not with self-sabotage. That would definitely be a different kind of way.
That makes it a lot harder.
Yeah, it certainly does. And she helps her clients identify their blind spots in love, heal their subconscious blocks to love, and navigate the dating world with grace and confidence. Now, as someone who last went on a first date 22 years ago, I'm totally fascinated by the dating world now. So I'm sure we'll be talking about this today. But we're actually going to talk about something a little bit closer to home for Carisa, and that's her own marriage and family and what it's like to be in an interracial marriage and to be raising a biracial daughter in 2021. So thank you so much for joining me today, Carisa.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you.
I'm so excited to chat with you too. So I guess the reason that I invited you to be part of this is because growing up, I have never experienced the fact that an interracial marriage would be an issue. Like it just, it didn't occur to me at all. And then I think I saw you post something about it probably about maybe 5 years ago. And it was really eye-opening for me that, you know, then we're going back to sort of 2016, 2017, but that in 2017, this was an issue. So, you know, if we go back, was it 51 years ago that it was was it the Lovings versus...
The Loving versus the state of Virginia case?
Yeah, you know, and that's when it actually became legal to have an interracial marriage.
Yes.
But that was 50 years ago. So
right.
For this to still be an issue now, I'm blown away.
It's wild. It's really wild. And I think we might have even connected because my husband and I did a live stream. We did a Facebook Live last year on Loving Day, talking about having an interracial marriage and what that was like for us. But yeah, it's wild. Even, you know, just last year thinking about that and some of the things that we've encountered and didn't expect, you know, especially not in, you know, 2020 or 2021. It's kind of interesting. I think the other thing, you know, here, obviously in the States, we've got this, this heightened climate, you know, this heightened political climate of like divisiveness, and with the whole ascendancy of Trump and the way that the political landscape changed, and the way that systemic racism has been brought forward more as an issue that more people are willing to like look at and deal with. I think that's also been something that has really brought it more to the forefront of people's minds, you know.
Yeah, and I guess that's it, that if you're not living in it, I was just oblivious. So
yeah. And well, I was oblivious really. It was kind of funny because when we got married, we kind of forgot we were a mixed race couple. We kind of forgot we were an interracial couple. And we had this moment where we went to the same pastor that my mother and her fiance at the time had gone to for like premarital counseling, right? So we went to him for basically premarital counseling. And he was like, you know, it's interesting how your relationship is similar to your mother's relationship with her fiance. And I was like, is it because he's a musician and Sam's a musician? And he's like, no. And I was like, is it because I'm more the spiritual person in the relationship? And, you know, so is she. And he's like, no. And we guessed like 3 different things before he was like, no. And I was like, oh, is it because I'm black and he's white? He's like, bingo. I was like,
we got there eventually.
But it was like one of those things where, you know, there are times growing up in Southern California, most of the time it's not really an issue, or it doesn't seem like an issue. And then those times when it does become an issue, it really reminds us, and it kind of is like, oh, right, there are people who think of this differently. There are people that don't expect this, or there are people that have certain beliefs about this or something like that, you know, that we wouldn't have expected or been kind of prepared for.
Yeah. And it's funny, my youngest daughter a couple of years ago, she said, oh, at school, this person thought I was, and there's one girl in her class she's African. And, this person thought that I was this girl. And I said, oh, okay. She goes, but I'm nothing like her. And I said, oh, okay. What differences can you see? She goes, well, she wears skirts and I wear dresses, and she wears this kind of shoes and I wear this, and she's got short hair and I've got long hair, and, all of these things. I was like, can you see any other differences between you and this other girl? She's like, no, I think that's it. I was like, oh, my daughter is so white she's see-through. And her friend is literally the other end of the spectrum. I always say that about my husband. That's it. We're not, unless we're 2% milk. So
when my daughter was going into kindergarten, her teacher asked her to draw a picture of herself. So she drew a picture of herself, and my daughter's very extra. So she drew a picture of herself, and then she drew me, and she drew my husband, and she was like the sunshine and the grass and all these things.
Yeah, perfect.
And the teacher was like, so, who is this with you in the picture? She's like, this is me in the middle, and this is my mommy, and she is golden brown, and this is my daddy, and he's pink. And the teacher was trying so hard not to laugh, and she was like, really? My husband is pink too. And it was just like so sweet.
Yeah. I describe it as we're gingham. I'm pink and white in the summer, blue and white in the winter, and green and white when I'm not well. So yeah. We come from a colourful family in our house as well.
I think it's really beautiful sometimes just seeing the way that kids see those things and describe those things to each other. I just think it's like, anytime you get to see it through their eyes, it really gives you a different perspective.
It really does, and it's really lovely, isn't it, to see that? And
it is.
Just the innocence of children. And has your daughter kept that innocence?
Do you mean like in terms of race and seeing things like that?
Yeah.
I think for the most part she has, she understands now, which is always a difficult thing, I think, as an African-American parent, as a Black parent. There's always a point where you're thinking, where you're wondering, like, at what point you should start talking about racism. You're wondering, like, at what point you should introduce that. If you're, it's a little bit different in my situation because my daughter is so, her coloring is so light, she's so fair-skinned, that people would just assume that she was white most of the time if they didn't see me.
Yeah, just with an amazing tan.
So it's a different conversation, I think, than the conversation where you're preparing, your Black son, how to respond to police officers pulling him over or those kinds of things. It's a different conversation, but it's still the conversation of like, people knowing this about you, that might change the way that they respond to you, that might influence the way that they respond to you. It's still having that conversation. And how do you have that conversation in a way that's like really preserving their own sense of self and their own self-esteem and their understanding that just because there are going to be people who judge them in this way doesn't have anything to do with them and their actual worth as a person, their value, and that those are the things that matter, but still that they need to be aware of these other things.
And it's really hard. And I was having a similar conversation with my children yesterday around some of those stereotypes that come with it, and they were sort of just really blown away. And it is totally different. It is. But I was saying, I'm from the UK. And so there's kind of this joke and stereotype that people from England are the great unwashed and don't bathe and that kind of thing. And my kids are going, well, that's just stupid. Yes, it is. But that's how stereotypes and that's how racism works. It's not based on reality. It's just based, they go, but why would they say that? I was like,
why would they do that?
Yeah.
That's the same thing that was my daughter's response when we were talking about racism in the United States. That was her response too, was like, but why would people treat other people differently just because their skin was a different color? That's stupid. Like, that is just, she's like, that's stupid and mean. And I was like, yeah, it's both of those things.
It is. You're right. Yes.
Like, yes, you're right. It doesn't make any sense. And it is,
Yeah. It's hard when, as adults, you're going, yep, honey, you're right. You're
Yep,
spot on.
you're right.
I don't know what to say to
I
that.
have nothing to add to that. Yeah.
So going back, can you tell me about meeting your husband and what it was like, when you first got together?
Oh, yeah. So we were both raised in Long Beach, California, which is a very diverse, culturally, it's very diverse, and um, honestly, like, I don't really think it occurred to either of us, neither of us thought like thought of it like I'm dating outside of my race. Neither of us really thought of it like that. And our family members weren't like that, so neither of us had anyone in our family that was like, are you sure you want to do this? Because this might be a thing for you. It might be an issue. You
didn't have to come out to your family.
Yeah. We didn't have to have a big thing. Kind of like, this is who I'm dating. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
This is who I'm dating. Oh, that's nice. But we met actually in high school. Well, I was in high school. He was in college. We met at a sandwich shop that we both worked at. And when we actually met, I didn't really like him initially because I thought he was very like uptight because he was a manager. I had just started working there, and he wanted me to prepare the salads in this particular way. And I was, I think, a bit too free-spirited about it. So he made me go back and, redo all of these salads. And I just thought, wow, he's really a stickler for like organization.
It's all going to be pooped out anyway. Does it really matter if the egg's this way or this way?
Exactly. Yeah. But it was like, no. It's got to be.
It matters.
Like, yeah. It is precise, Yeah. And that's really like a quality that I've grown to have a lot of respect for, because you can't both just wing it all the time.
Yeah. Is it
it's nice to have that.
You're
balance.
Either a putter or a left. You either put it somewhere or you leave it somewhere. I'm definitely the left it person in our relationship. My husband's definitely the putter.
Put it somewhere person. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that as a way of describing it. I'll have to remember that. But eventually we just ended up. It was kind of, he was going through a breakup, and so a friend of mine. Her name was Heather. Heather and I started spending a lot of time with Sam to kind of like help him through his breakup and just cheer him up and kind of like make him get out and do things.
Yeah.
And then she started dating someone. So she was just like, I'm gone. I'm spending all this time with this guy that I'm super interested in. And he and I had been so used to just going out as friends doing things that it was kind of like, then we just started dating. And then it was just a really smooth, natural kind of transition from friendship into an attraction, and things just went from there.
Aww.
And yeah, so it was very sweet. And what was funny was I say that nobody had any like pushback, and there wasn't pushback, but my grandfather did note. He did bring it to my attention, not in a negative way.
Just, have you noticed?
Exactly. It was more like that. It was kind of funny because he said, he kind of pulled me aside and he's like, so you and Sam are serious, are you? And I was like, yeah, we are. And he said, your Aunt Janine married a white man. And I was like, yes, I know that.
He's been my uncle for how many years now? I know. Yeah.
Yes, I'm aware of that. Yeah. But I appreciate the reminder. And then that was kind of all that he said about it. So I was like, okay, good talk, Granddad.
Yeah.
And then we just kind of like went on from there. But I've never had any I've never had for a minute the feeling in his family that it was some kind of a negative issue with them or anything like that. They've always been when we got married, they were so welcoming and so wonderful. It was just like, it was just great.
Yeah.
And with my family towards Sam, there was a period of time when we broke up. We were together for about 3 years, and then we broke up when I was 21, and then we were apart for 3 years, and then we got back together. And when we were apart, my dad was just always like, are you sure you and Sam can't get back together? I really, really like him. He's a great guy. He's like a solid guy, and now you're just going out with all these different guys and I don't know who you're with. And he was just very like, are you sure you guys can't patch it up? Do you want me to talk to him? I'm like, no, Dad, it's okay.
It's all good. If it's meant to happen, okay. We'll get back together, I promise.
Yeah, I had to talk my dad through my breakup with Sam, because it was very difficult for him.
Very tricky on the family, isn't it?
It's very hard on him. And during that time, I remember I spent some time with Sam's sister. When I went to their house, his sister Michelle was there, and also his younger siblings were there, and he had moved out by then. And when I saw his mom, she just hugged me for so long. She was just like, I really, really miss you. And then she goes, when you two broke up, the youngest siblings, they cried for a week and a half. And I was like, so did I.
Just out of interest, was Sam as upset? Or was it just the siblings?
So it was just like, it was always, the families were never, it was never like a thing. When we would run into things, it would be, my grandmother on my mother's side was from a very small town in Ohio called Hillsboro. And Hillsboro is like, it's not old in the sense of, European towns where you can trace things back 500, 600, 700 years, right? Yeah. But it's old in terms of our history, Yeah. So it's like a couple 100 years old, right? So like generations of my family are buried there because when they escaped from Kentucky, when they escaped over the Ohio River out of slavery, they settled in Ripley, Ohio, and then they went up to Hillsboro, Ohio. So I have literally like 6 generations of my family are buried there. And in a lot of ways, it's still a segregated town just because people are just not, they still live where their parents lived.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those things were kind of striking because we would go there and I would look at the cemetery and you could tell the side that was the African-American side and the side that was the white side. You could just tell from the way that the stones were, the grandeur and the size and all of those kinds of things. But also what was unusual and what we weren't really expecting was that we would be such a sensation. We did not expect to draw so much attention. So what we would see would be like people's heads would stay still, but their eyes would follow us when we would walk in stores or things like that.
They're not noticing that we're watching because our heads are still. It's just our creepy eyes that are following them around the room.
Exactly. We would get the creepy eyes following us around thing, which we didn't see. Like it's so rare to see that in Southern California that people are even, take it as an anomaly. Nobody really notices here. So when we go places like that, we would notice because of the response to us being so different, and we had this situation where Sam was outside of my grandma's house sitting in the car making a phone call because that's how he could get reception.
Yeah.
And my grandmother had relatives across the street and they were like, you could tell that they were looking out the window thinking, who is this white guy in front of Betty's house, in a car? Like, is she okay? So my cousin who was across the street, books it out of her house and just comes running across the street, basically like going as fast as she can. And Sam, thinking, oh, this is family coming to like greet us, gets out of the car and tries to like connect to her. And she's trying to get past him to the door because she's like, who is this white stranger that's, I need to go see about, Betty.
Yeah.
So she gets to the door and they get to the door at the same time.
Oh.
And I can hear the conversation from the other side because I'm inside. And she says, well, I need to see about Betty. And he says, well, hi, I'm Sam, who are you? And she says, well, I'm Kin. And he says, well, so am I. She's like, like, how can that be? So we've had interesting situations kind of on both sides with some of those things, where.
How
we
did
just
you
haven't expected those.
How was that for your grandmother or grandmother who, then had all of these people talking about, what was that like for her?
Well, my grandmother always loved to defy expectations.
Ah,
So she
nice.
was just tickled.
Yeah.
She thought it was the funniest thing ever, And yeah, she loved even just hearing me tell that story to other people. She would laugh about it every time.
Nice. That's it. If we're going to be the talk of
Yeah.
the town, we're going to make the most of it. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
mm,
And it's that kind of a town where, I think for so long, Black people and white people there had intermarried for a long time.
mm,
So even though it's kind of segregated still, everyone's sort of related by marriage.
yeah.
Even if they are, whether they're, mixed race or whatever it is, like it's that kind of a town.
Mm-hmm.
It's the kind of town that's so small. My dad told me the first time that I went there, when Sam and I weren't together, he's like, don't fall in love in Hillsboro, Ohio.
Chances are someone's a cousin somewhere.
They're related to you somehow. He's like, just don't fall in love there. Like, good advice.
Nice. Oh. So have you experienced anything that has been, so that's kind of one, I guess, example of how it's been something that you hadn't been expecting, or how's it been for Sam?
I think for the most part, it's been, at least what he shares with me, is that people just think he has an attractive wife. I don't think that many people have said to him, so your wife's Black, is she? I don't think many people have said that to him. If they have, he doesn't pass that on to me.
Yeah.
But I think, there was one point where we were in Huntington Beach, which is, there's a very low population of other races. It's mostly white in Huntington Beach. And we were there at at a theater there for a performance. I think that his dad was in musical theater there, and I don't remember exactly the show, but we were there. And I looked around and I realized I was the only Black person in the entire room. And I said to Sam, I said, I think I'm oh, actually this time I didn't notice that. He noticed it before me. He's like, I think you're the only Black person here. I was like, yeah, I think so. I'm used to that feeling though.
Yeah.
Like it's more common for me. But I remember at one point saying to him, after we got married, we'd been married a couple of years, and somebody noticed something or said something, and I said, I wonder if you were expecting this, like if you were expecting, or how well prepared you were for, that our relationship was probably going to get some extra scrutiny or something like that. And he just looked at me for a while like I was crazy. And then he goes, what are you talking about? I knew you were Black. And I was like, okay. It was kind of like, it's like, yeah, I knew you were Black going into this. Like, I figured at one point or another, somebody might say something, like, that's not like I wasn't expecting that,
Do you think, though, that knowing it and living it can be quite different? So you mentioned before about having to, you don't have a son, but, having to prepare a Black son for if he's pulled over by a police officer. I have, it's not, my only reference point is American television. So I happened to watch a Grey's Anatomy episode and then another hospital drama where it happened both in the same week kind of thing with, going through the hands have to go on the steering wheel and, all of that kind of thing, and just
looking straight ahead.
That's it.
Yes and no answers.
Yeah.
I am reaching for my ID. Yeah. I do not have a weapon. All of those kinds of things.
All of those kinds of things. And so I can see that on television, but I can't imagine living that. So for Sam, well, yeah, I knew you were Black. Yes, in theory, you knew that, but what's that actually like when you're living through potential scrutiny or potential kind of like, oh, so you married a Black woman?
Yeah, like, oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I think that we've had situations that were unexpected, for him in terms of just like he like the person's response was so outrageous that there was no way anybody could have maybe anticipated that, you know. Like no matter what, you know. I remember we were at a restaurant once and there were these two older white ladies. And when you think of like white haired,
Yeah.
you know, like deaf, like that generation, right? And we were at one of those, so we were sitting just across the aisle, very, very small aisles from these two older white ladies. And it was just, you couldn't fail to notice that they were really staring hard at us. I mean, like, it was very obvious. If they could have been closer to us, you know, they
would have been pressed against you. Yeah.
Yes, it was really, really odd. And I hadn't experienced anything like that before, but they were just really staring at us. And finally, you know, we kind of giggled about it under our breath to each other because we just thought it was kind of funny. But finally, I just turned to them and I was like, "Hi, good afternoon," and they both went and just like pretended that they were eating, and I just thought, "Oh, okay," you know. But it was kind of like he was really more struck by that than I was. He's like, "I have never seen that. I've never seen anything like that. They were really staring hard at us," and I was like, "Yeah, that happens," you know. But for him, he was just like, "I have never seen anything like that before."
I would have been going like, have we got something, like, is there something in my teeth? What are they actually staring at to, you know, take a little while for that to, you know, work out what that was.
Yeah, I know. It's sometimes I think everybody has that where that first feeling where you think it can't be because I'm black. That can't be why they're staring at me. You know, I that a lot of black people and people just people of color or you know, anybody who is worried that they're being singled out for being different, they always wonder, is it really because I'm different or is it because of something else?
That's it. Is my skirt tucked up in my underwear or something like that?
Exactly. Like something like that. So there's always that extra level of sort of like anxiety or concern of like, is this about this other thing, which I have no control over? Or is this a regular, just human interaction thing that people do when they're humaning with each other?
Yeah.
You know? And it's difficult really to kind of like strike a balance because in one situation, you're not as safe. You know, you're potentially not as safe. And so it's kind of like erring on the side of, you know, I mean, like sometimes you can tell from context, right? Like, did they drive up in a truck with a giant Trump flag on it?
Yeah.
You know? Maybe it's a race thing.
Yeah.
You know,
maybe there's a possibility.
Possibly it could be, you know, or you know, it's like you always try to just give people the benefit of the doubt, but I think sometimes it's a little trickier than others.
Have there ever been any experiences where you have experienced that negativity or, you know, or other people's anger or hostility about the fact that you are in a mixed marriage?
No, I can't think of a time where somebody was like overtly hostile or violent toward us. You know, thank goodness we've never had that kind of an experience.
Brilliant.
Yeah, we've been really fortunate in that way.
Flip side of that, which is what I'm really hoping that you say yes to this, but have you experienced anything where people have been overly positive about the fact that you are a visible mixed marriage? And, you know, that whole, if you can see her, you can be her. So being out there and showing that actually it's about loving the person, not the color of their skin.
Sure. I think that sometimes we have the situation, you know, our preference is that people just don't really, unless it's Loving Day, that it's not an issue.
Yeah.
You know, I have occasionally run across someone who's been like, you guys are so brave. Yeah. And it's just like, that's not coming across how you feel like it's coming across, you know. But yeah, mostly it's, you know, if people we know so many interracial couples, you know. It's like funny that when we actually sit down and think about it, we're like, oh right, that's an interracial marriage too. You know, it's like it's such
They're
a
just Bob and
natural, we
Lisa.
have so many friends or family members that are in those situations. Like, you know, Sam has 3 siblings and 2 of them are in interracial marriages or about to be.
Yeah.
You know, one of them is and the other one is going to be, you know. So really the sister who is white, who is marrying a white person, is like the anomaly.
She's the odd one out.
You know?
Yeah.
And really, like, it's similar on my side of the family, where there's been so much of, you know, people marrying for love and not worrying about racial things that, you know, everybody kind of on my side of the family looks really similar. After decades of doing that, everybody kind of is this color or a little lighter.
Yeah.
You know, you know, most at least on my mom's, with my mom and my aunt, you know. But yeah, there's not been a lot. I haven't experienced somebody being violent or hostile towards us because of it, and part of it is because of where we live.
Yeah,
I think if we lived in, I have heard, you know, terrible stories about mixed race couples in rural America who have really experienced a lot of racism or hostility, or even in more of the southern states. You know, you see that a lot more in those areas than you do somewhere like on the coasts. You know, you don't see that much in California where we live. You know, if you went more inland, though, you would see that. If you were still in California, but you went more inland to someplace like Bakersfield or, you know, closer to those parts of California, you'd see a lot more of that.
And I guess what I was hoping is that it's just becoming more normal, and so it is less of an issue. But whether people had, you know, who I still think some people are raised that, you know, hearing things like, I'm pulling this off a Facebook post that I saw recently, hearing something like, I don't want coffee-coloured grandchildren, so make sure you're marrying a white person. And I was just like,
sure.
What?
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, my grandmother's relatives, my grandmother has shared with me things that they've said, that she remembers hearing like her great grandma say, or her, you know, grandma, things like, you better brighten up that corner, which was code for like, marry somebody lighter than you, you know. And they still had paper bag tests for some of the churches about whether, if your skin was darker than the color of a paper bag, you couldn't join that church. And those were Black churches, you know. Wow. So there's like a history of colorism still in the United States, even of like, you know, lighter skinned, darker skinned, and making a difference between them. But yeah, I mean, it's just interesting how you can kind of get it on both sides, which is, you know, you know, they're like, growing up, you know, obviously there were white people who would have a problem with me being Black. Then there were also Black people who didn't think I was enough.
You weren't
so
Black
it's
enough.
Kind of like, you know, you just get to a point where you just spend time with good people and that don't care about that.
and that's why I think that this was a surprise for me, because I live in an echo chamber. You know, I live with people who have similar kinds of thoughts and values, that it just was a surprise that people would think this. And but it was, I guess, I was hopeful that if people who grow up hearing these kinds of things can see happy marriages regardless of colours of skin, that it actually makes them think, well, actually, you know what, I've fallen in love with this person. It doesn't matter what colour their skin is. I can have a happy relationship and find my people, you know, find my people, as in find people who will accept us, because those people are out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the more that you see that, that the less you really think about it.
Yeah.
You know, I think that the more that, like, for example, you know, with Kamala Harris and her husband, you know, that's like, they're a mixed race couple and they're nationally prominent, and it's like, oh, that's cool. You know, it's like a normal thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of funny. Like, the only time I really notice it now is like if I'm bringing Katie into a group of new kids, you know, or if I'm picking her up from a group who's never met me and she says, Mommy, then someone will look and be like, that's your mom? You know, that would happen sometimes. But usually, you know, I think we know so many parents of other kids at her school that are in interracial marriages. And it's like, I think it's just becoming so common that it's like barely even worth remarking on for a lot of people, which is great.
Yeah,
you know,
that it is. It's really good. And do you find that is that one of the blocks? So when you're working with people and you're trying to help them find love, is that ever one of the blocks that they have to get over and get through?
Well, I never. I should let me make sure I'm not lying to you. I try very hard to honor people's desires for what they want, while also preparing them for the fact that the universe loves to throw curveballs. Yeah. And that sometimes what they're looking for might show up in a way that they weren't expecting, and that how a person makes them feel is much more important than really anything else, right? It's like, are they careful with your heart? Yeah. You know, that's what matters. Is someone careful with your heart? What is their, you know, do they have integrity? Are they an honest person? You know, and
do your
that
values
kind of
align?
Yeah, that can go for both ways. I've definitely had Black clients who have said, I'm not interested in dating anyone who's white. I also had Black clients who have said, I prefer white men. And I've had white clients who've said similar things. Yeah. So it's an interesting thing, because sometimes people will just say that they have a preference for a certain aesthetic. Like they'll say, I think that brown skin is really beautiful. And it's really hard to argue with someone's preference. Yeah. You know what I mean? So a lot of times what I try to just talk to people about is steering clear of like fetishizing people about things like that. You know, it's not the idea of like, I need to date a Black woman because I love Black skin. Yeah. It's like, you know, it's more a thing of like, I appreciate these qualities or these characteristics about different women or whatever it is, you know. I think that when people can steer clear of fetishizing people over specific physical characteristics, where it's like, oh, I got one of those and now I can cross them off my list, like that kind of a thing. Bingo. Yeah, exactly. You know, when their preference comes from like a deep appreciation for something, you know, or I've seen men who grew up, like white men who've grown up in mostly like Black culture, who are very deeply appreciative of the beauty of Black women, and just really always just saw themselves marrying a Black woman and did. And I don't see a problem with that, or a problem with like a white woman marrying a Black man, you know, like if someone says like, this is who I've always dated, you know, this is who I'm attracted to, this is how, you know, because a lot of times our preferences for a particular physical aesthetic, you know, they were set by that first person we had a crush on in elementary school or something like that, you know. And it's just really hard to argue about what someone, you know, thinks of as the thing that they're attracted to physically, or what they're not attracted to. So I never try to really talk people out of that. I just try to help them be aware of, number one, the possibility that love might show up in a different package.
The universe has got an interesting sense of humor at times. So before we finish up today, can I just ask, because I'm incredibly nosy, but it's been, like I said, it's been 22 years since I went on my first date. How has dating changed, And it's been a long time since you went on your first date with your husband as well. So how have you found dating has changed?
Okay, so dating has changed because there are a lot more ways to get rejected now, which is super fun.
Yeah, you're really selling it.
Right? Definitely date. No.
I'm not sure my husband's going to agree with that sentiment, so I think we're okay.
Well, the thing about it, I think that's different now is that, the flip side of that is true. There are a lot more ways to connect now than there used to be. I always tell my clients, that are hesitant about dating online dating is great, but if there are fears or limiting beliefs or attachments to an ex or wounds or whatever that you have in your energy, that's going to show if you're online anyway.
Yeah.
So it's really much better to heal those things. And then whether you want to date online or whether you just want to date in real life, you're good either way.
Yeah.
But really it's about healing those things before you go into that environment,
Love yourself
because
first before you start looking for it from somewhere else.
Yes, absolutely. And also just like having a really clear idea of what you want and things like that, because those things are so important. It's funny, like people get so fixated on the idea of online dating and they'll just be thinking, well, I've got to date online. If I'm going to meet somebody, I've got to put myself out there, but I hate it. And it feels like a meat market and whatever. And I always just try to calm their anxieties and remind them that like people were meeting and falling in love and getting married a long time before the internet existed. And, they still will and it'll be fine, but really it's the whole thing about love is like, it's not really about making it happen. It's about making it welcome.
Yeah.
And we do that in our energy. And we do that by healing those wounds, healing those old fears, being aware of and clearing those limiting beliefs, things like beliefs in scarcity about like that there aren't enough partners for everyone or all of the good partners are taken or like those kinds of things. Yeah. The belief that like, if I don't do this, I'm going to be alone forever, those kinds of things.
And that's actually a
beliefs
bad thing.
That we have to make a choice.
I think there's there's this belief that if I don't do this, I'm going to be alone forever. And there's nothing worse than being alone forever. Actually, that's not the end of the world.
Right.
I often think, let's think about the fact. Let's think about the fact maybe you're better to be alone than be in a marriage that's really not good for you or a relationship that's really not good for you.
Absolutely. And I would even go further because I would say that, that's like a dichotomy, right? You can either be alone or you can be in a bad marriage.
Yeah, exactly.
And usually when people are thinking of like, then if they want to date, it's because they really want to be with someone.
Yeah.
So I really try to help them know that desire that they have to be with someone is there for a reason, and that there's no such thing as a soulmate. There are actually hundreds of compatible people all over this giant earth that you could be great with, So it's really more about, it really is about clearing things out of your energy and as old things that linger, are the things that lead us to the self-sabotage. It's like, it's the reason why you agree to have dinner with the ex. That's when things are starting to go great in your dating life. It's like, I see that it's those kinds of self-sabotaging things we do because we still have stuff in our energy that needs to heal. So get rid of that stuff. It's easy. People are like jumping out of the woodwork trying to date us.
It's good to know. Not that I'm planning on leaving my husband anytime soon, but just in case.
You're like, no,
it's good to know that there's options out there.
He better really be on his A game.
This is right. Yeah.
I got options.
Before I was thinking, well, where do you even meet people? But now. He's going to be glad I came into the office early to record this, I'm sure.
He's going to be like, great.
Right.
I'm so glad you talked to that love coach.
That's it, especially since he's the one who does all the editing for me. So. Oh, dear.
Well, then I guess I should say, sorry. I hope I didn't open a can of worms. Be on your A game.
That's it.
She's got options.
Be on it, honey. Be on it. And before we wrap up today, do you have any other tips or thoughts or anything else that you would like to share today?
I would just like to really say to anyone who's wanting love in any way, and to just be open and think about it as a chance to have fun, get to know someone, and think about it in terms of like how if a person shows you that they're careful with your heart, like let that be the thing that guides you, like, and let everything else be really secondary, you
Yeah.
know, let it just be, let it just start as a fun way of getting to know someone new and being really present in that moment and just letting things grow organically from there.
Yeah, I heard a really beautiful thing that I'm going to completely misquote, but it's something like, people will show you their true colours. We need to believe them. So
Yes, believe them the first time.
that's it. You
You'll
don't wait
share
for,
yourself a lot of heartache, save it
yeah.
a lot of heartache. Yeah.
But
It's
also,
true.
when people show you that they are going to be gentle with your heart, or that they are they do have similar values, or that they are going to hold you in high esteem, believe them.
Hmm. Believe them. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sometimes love is easy. Sometimes
yeah.
things work out.
It's
Yeah. More
yeah,
often than not.
yeah. And I do actually have one other question for you, if that's okay.
Of
If
course.
somebody is in a relationship and they are getting pushback from the people around them, because
Hmm.
whether that's, because of, for whatever reason, do you have
Hmm.
any hints or tips for the people who are getting that pushback from their close family or friends for how
Yeah,
they can respond to that?
absolutely. Um, the thing about it is that the two people in the relationship need to really be united. They need to be a team. They need to be on the same page, and they need to decide together how they're going to respond to those things, and they need to support each other. A lot of times, what will happen in that kind of situation is the person whose family it is will try to be like an intermediary.
Mm,
They'll be like, "I don't want to take sides. No, 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 I love everybody." But if that relationship, when you have a commitment to each other and you make that relationship your relationship, you have a responsibility to that person to protect them and to listen to them and to really value them and understand their perspective on what they're going through. And instead of kind of enabling other people to feel it's just two opinions,
mm,
it's not two different opinions. It's not a both sides are right in that situation. It's the side of like one side is attacking your partner,
yeah.
and you need to be very firm um, about saying that that's not okay.
And
You
having
know,
having those boundaries in place.
and you have to have those conversations, like what will we do if this happens, blah blah blah, because um, it's like it's the kind of thing where when it happens, the person who is being kind of attacked will, if their partner is kind of trying to do a both sides are right, or kind of
Mm,
a thing, then that person feels so alone. They
yeah,
feel so alone because their partner is their support. That's
yeah.
their person, you know. So it's have your partner's back.
Mm,
It's like the number one foundation thing. Without that, you don't have a relationship. You
mm.
really don't. As soon as one person decides that they're committed to something else more than the relationship, then that relationship doesn't exist anymore,
Yeah.
even if the other person just doesn't know that yet.
Mm.
You know, the two people have to be united in that.
And I think, because of the way that, your experiences within California, it was, it sounds as though you were less likely to see that as an issue with you and Sam being in that interracial marriage. Was it a conversation that you had before you got married?
We did have that conversation before we got married, but it actually came up as more of an issue in regards to other things related to like other family things
Mm.
that were not related to race.
Ah.
So it was like it did come up, and it took quite a long time for some kind of a conflict to come up like that. But when it did, it was a very difficult thing for us to navigate through. And because we had kind of an easy, idyllic time with the family. Like, everyone was great. Everyone
loves us.
Exactly. You know, so when that did come up, it was really a trying time for us, you know, and it was really, it was such a great thing for us to actually go to counseling and bring someone else in, because, you know, you think you know what you're going to do, or you think that you understand the other person's point of view, or you think that maybe they just don't understand mine. But it's really like, sometimes it's the kind of thing where you have to tag in extra help so that they can so everyone can understand everyone's viewpoint and get tools to move forward. You know, so we were taken kind of off guard because the race stuff wasn't an issue. We thought we were home free.
Yeah.
No, it was not the case.
And I think that you can have that conversation beforehand, but when you're in the moment, it's all well and good having had that conversation, but that's in theory. When it's actually in practice, it can feel, you know, oh, well, this is what will happen, and we'll have these firm boundaries and we'll do this. But actually, you love your partner and you love your mum, or, you know, whoever that conflict is with. So you can find yourself caught in the middle. And bringing in a counsellor doesn't mean that your marriage is on the rocks. And, you know, people shouldn't wait until their marriage is on the rocks to actually go to a marriage counsellor.
No,
you don't.
Usually,
wait
when they do that,
broken.
they're not.
No, that's it. You don't wait until your car's broken down on the side of the road to go and have your annual service, do you?
Like, oil change.
Yeah, kind of. It's good to top these things up regularly, not wait until disaster's struck.
Yeah. Well, and you can get such a good perspective from a third party that's just wanting to see you both get where you want to be. You know, one of the most powerful things I think that our counselor said to us was, it's like you're both in the deep end drowning, and you're each looking at the other end going, how come you're not saving me?
Yeah.
You know, you're each looking at the other one thinking that.
Yeah.
And there have been a few times where our marriage has been stressful. I thought that to myself, like, this is how we both feel, I'm sure, right now. Like, he's wanting the same thing from me that I want from him, but we're both really tapped out, and we need to have like give each other extra grace and a little extra compassion right now. And we've had those times from both parts of our family where we've had to be like, here is the boundary, you know, and this is unacceptable, you know. But yeah, your point about that, thinking about it in theory and actually experiencing in the moment, so different. It's always different, right? Because you're not expecting it. By the time you realize, oh, this is that thing we talked about, you've
5
already
years
said
ago.
like 8 wrong things.
You
know. So
hold on a minute while I quickly backpedal.
Yes. You don't get to present this wonderful, you know, thing that you had planned to present. You're just like damage control.
That's it.
You know, it's like,
hold on while
everyone's upset now.
Yeah, that's it. If I keep digging, do you think will I dig myself out of this hole, or
Somehow.
And just because you brought up marriage counselling, there's just one more thing that I just want to add, and that is that for some people who have been to marriage counselling and gone, oh well, marriage counselling, it didn't work, I didn't like it, it didn't work, you know, just one thing I want to add is that, you know, sometimes when we buy a new pair of shoes, we get blisters. That doesn't mean that we should stop wearing all shoes. It perhaps means that actually, you know, what we're doing feels a little bit difficult at the moment, and we might need to wear them in a little bit more. Or perhaps this is not the right pair of shoes for us, and perhaps we need a different pair of shoes. So sometimes it can feel a bit clunky, or it can feel a bit awkward going and seeing a therapist. Either go, you know what, this isn't a good fit, let's try a different therapist, but don't write off therapy altogether.
Or hang in a little bit long.
Exactly.
With that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely had, the first therapist was fantastic, you know, and then we went to a therapist at a different time in our marriage, who was just woo. I mean, it just was not a good fit, you know, at all. And we were just like, oh wow, like, okay, we're gonna keep trying, right? You're like, yes, we'll just go find someone else.
Yeah.
But I mean, yes, we'll find someone else for sure. I mean, I think because I am an energy healer, and she had something to do with that world, Sam thought we should go to her and she would be a good fit. And she was just so like out there. Yeah. You know, and it just wasn't a good fit. So sometimes you think on paper, this person's perfect, you know, and that can make us think like, oh, well, then it must be us, or it must be that counseling's not for us, or, and your point is really well taken that, yeah, you know, it's sometimes just a matter of just switching, finding somebody else, or sticking with it a little bit longer. You know, we found someone else and she was great.
Yeah. And that's it. You just got to find that good fit. Great. Yeah. And I think what you said before relates to dating as well, that sometimes someone seems great on paper, and then you meet them and think, but on paper, they're perfect. Yeah, on paper they are, and that's where that should have stayed.
Yeah, because you date in real life.
Yeah, that's it.
Not on paper.
Sadly, we're not doing this just on paper.
And I think that's the kind of thing where people start thinking of it as, you know, there's the idea that you've invested so much time or energy in something that you can't really throw it all away now, so you have to continue. Yeah. It's kind of like people do that sometimes with dating and in relationships where they're just like, they start dating someone and they're like, but they seem so great. And they, you know, I remember there was a Sex and the City episode where one of the characters was dating someone who had this really obnoxious habit of like scratching himself in public. And she was like, I don't understand why he's doing this. He went to Brown. like, you're like, yeah, but, you know, good on paper, right?
Yeah,
like,
that's
you only
it.
go so far.
Yeah. That's exactly
why is he doing this?
That's it. Good on paper, but sadly the things that get missed on that piece of paper can be just as important as what's written on it. Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for your time this morning, Carisa. I really appreciate it. And so you focus specifically on healing after breakups, manifesting love, dating tips, dating over 40, self-love practices to attract love, and healthy, happy relationships. Did I miss anything off that amazing list?
I don't think so.
Just the most important
I feel
thing.
Like
that covers it. I think that you are passionate about love and trying to help people find connection. Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love love.
Oh, me too. It brings me such joy.
Love.
And I think that that's really come across today, that is what you're passionate about and what brings you joy and how you strive to, I guess, make meaningful connection in the world. So, and I really appreciate you sharing those experiences with us today.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for having me. Yeah. It's been so much fun chatting with you.
It's been lovely chatting with you. All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining me for today's episode of A Hidden World of Women, a podcast brought to you by Women's Health and Wellbeing Services. For more information on the services we offer, head to whws.org.au or Women's Health and Wellbeing Services on YouTube and social media. Looking forward to the next episode where we uncover the hidden world of women.